yesterday, you know who finally deleted that social media post appearing to show him as Jesus? Maybe he took it down because the MAGA supporters and Christian conservatives lost their minds over it. Now, the White House is offering some different explanations on the post. Please take a look.
I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that? It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better, and I do make people better.
I think the president was posting a joke, and of course he took it down because he recognized that a lot of people weren't understanding his humor. I certainly think that in some cases it would be best for the Vatican to stick to matters of morality, to stick to matters of what's going on in the Catholic Church, and let the President of the United States stick to dictating American public policy.
I thought that was blasphemy. As a Christian, I was very offended.
I don't know why the president's getting so desperate for attention that he feels the need to mock 1.4 billion Catholics.
Do you even care about lying to us anymore? Is it over? Is this relationship gone stale? Your lies used to have a real spark.
So religious conservatives, are they going to forgive him for this? I mean, is the base going to believe that he thought it was portraying him as a doctor?
Well, he seems to really believe that American people are so stupid that they would believe that, light is emanating from a doctor's hands, for example.
And he's typically my doctors don't do this to me.
Yeah.
Or wear that.
And they usually don't, I'm married to a doctor. I've never seen him in that outfit, that particular.
Maybe you should take
particular
him
look.
That's a good outfit to give him as a gift.
Clearly, when Trump watches The Pit, he sees this next image. Wait a second.
It's fascinating.
I think we have it.
I actually, yeah. I mean, one thing, we know that he's incompetent and
a liar.
And a liar.
Yeah.
But he kind of was a better liar before. I'm questioning now the fact that he's declining so much that his lies are that bad. Like, it's very obvious he's not a doctor in that photo. And so in terms of
it is a Red Cross medical professional, was what he said.
Yeah,
What's that got to do with
to
it?
be clear, that's what he said. But, to your question, Whoopi, I think, the president has, 340 million Americans, where the Pope has 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide
How many are there in the United
leader.
States, though?
There are hundreds of thousands, and the approval...
I think more, a couple of million.
Yeah, Christianity is the biggest faith in America.
It's the biggest faith. They comprise about 1 in 5 voters nationally. And in 2024, Trump won that group by somewhere between 10 and 20 point margin, but it is actually the swing vote. It's an independent vote. And apparently right now, as of March 2026, 42% of U.S. registered voters and Catholics had a positive view of Pope Leo, and only 41% of U.S. Catholic voters approved of Trump. And so I think this is going to be
it's not a good strategy to alienate all of these Catholics, a lot of them who voted for him.
There are like a few people on the planet that you shouldn't pick a fight with. I'd say like the Pope, Dolly Parton, like maybe the Dalai Lama. Like, there's a few people just so beloved.
You know what? I would add one more.
Yes.
The View.
Thank you. This isn't really the focus of the issue with this tweet, which was ultimately taken down, and he very rarely takes tweets down. Yeah. What stood out to me is when he was posting it. So he posted a series of tweets between 12:43 a.m., 2:35 a.m., 2:38 a.m. and then 4:10 in the morning.
Yeah.
I have a newborn with better sleep habits than that. Like, swaddle this man, get him a bottle. What is going on?
Should he be sleeping?
Correct. And it does that. There is something to your judgment is not at its finest in the middle of the night. But it did stand out to me that this was a tweet he chose to take, or truth he chose to take down. He didn't take down that horrible one about Robert Mueller's death, about Rob Reiner's death. There was one about 9/11 years ago that he never took down. But this speaks to the fact that he alienated evangelical Christians who are with him and the Catholic vote, which is a swing vote because Catholics are not as diehard of a bloc that's with him the way the evangelicals are. He realizes he really stepped in
I don't think he realized who he was going to like deeply offend by that. So when he does these things, I think he's often looking for a distraction, like throwing some faux rage out there. Let's see everyone flip out. I don't think he saw his side flipping out, which is kind of a misgauge, and maybe because he wasn't thinking straight at 2:30 a.m.
I think also he's a master of distraction. And
normally.
Melania had a faux pas last week when she came out and started talking about the Epstein files. It's like, you know, first he has to cover the Epstein files by having a war with Iran. Then the Epstein files have to cover the Iran war. And now this has to cover all of that.
But one thing I would like to remember is in Matthew and Mark in the Bible, Jesus alerts his disciples to not be deceived by false prophets who will claim themselves to be the Christ, performing great signs and wonders. Every time he does these things, I can't help but like think, it's really on the nose here. Like he's literally pretending to be the coming of Christ.
And let's face it, some of his supporters have likened him to a savior-like figure. And I really hope at this point that they realize that he is a false prophet. No
but they were
question about
kidding.
it.
They were kidding when they were doing that in a way. They don't really believe that.
I think they do
There
really
was the
believe
video of his spiritual advisor, Paula White, that I think a lot of
remember that?
Christians were very concerned by.
Yeah, but
She was
Jesus
really
himself did
comparing
not
him.
run around saying, I'm the Messiah, I'm the Messiah.
Jesus
This
kind of
guy,
did say he was
you're
the
supposed to have a little bit of...
That's exactly what Jesus said. I am the Messiah.
You know what?
No, he did not.
It's
Jesus
been a minute
was more
since her
Here's the
like
thing.
that.
The Pope's
Listen, I
got
knew
it.
Judas,
He's got God behind.
She just said, I knew Jesus.
Jesus was not narcissistic like this guy.
And
But
by
when
the way,
you are the Messiah, it's not narcissism to say it.
Yes, it is.
When you are the Messiah.
I'm going to move this along because this is like, it's too much for me. The Pope has God with him.
yes.
You know,
That's
God
right.
will take care of this. God will take care of him, and nobody believes you were a doctor. Nobody.
No.
No, not even
your
Sanjay
people.
Gupta.
Your people don't believe it. Nobody believes it. They all saw what you were trying to do, and you were trying to make some sort of weird statement. And I would caution the vice president that one of the things that the Pope is supposed to do is to make us aware that war is wrong and we should find other ways to do things before we go to war.
And Jesus said that as well.
Yeah, well,
Jesus
I
came in
was
peace.
gonna point
Blessed are the
that
peacemakers.
That
And J.D. Vance is the highest-ranking Catholic in this administration.
well,
and he should be.
find.
He may need to
that's
go
a
back
whole
to Sunday
discussion.
school.
It's a discussion.